Andy, my dude, have you heard of the magical website builder known as Squarespace?
Ugh, not another Squarespace ad. I feel like every podcast is sponsored by them.
Hey, don't knock it till you try it. Yes, okay, it is overhyped, but actually it lives up to the hype. Squarespace is like a website fairy godmother. With a click of a button, your site transforms into a beautiful masterpiece.
A website fairy godmother? That sounds interesting. What makes it so magical?
Well, for starters, those slick templates make anyone look like a professional web designer. Pick one, customize the colors and fonts to match your brand, and voila. Plus, the drag and drop fluid engine is so easy, your grandma could build a site on Squarespace.
Well, she did knit me a lovely scarf last Christmas. Maybe website design is next.
Exactly. And when you're ready to sell your Nana's handmade scarves online, Squarespace has built-in e-commerce. Add a store with one click. Get flexible payment options. Then watch those sales roll in. And when she wants to teach others her steezy scarf skills, Squarespace's new courses feature is just the ticket. Nana can set up her curriculum and enrollments and payments in a snap and become the next e-knitting influencer.
Oh, wow, you really sold me with the grandma angle. Sign me up for that free trial.
Just go to thenextreel.com/Squarespace and transform your site into a beautiful Squarespace masterpiece.
Well, thanks, Pete. Even though it's overhyped, Squarespace actually sounds perfect for Nana's site's needs. Appreciate the warning on the ads, though. I'll brace myself next time I listen to a podcast.
Anytime. Let me know if you need any help getting that site up and running. Andy, can you believe we've almost hit 700 episodes of The Next Reel?
I know, it's crazy. And with all the other episodes in our family of podcasts, we are well over 1,200 episodes of movie conversation. It's really pretty amazing that we've gotten to have these in-depth movie chats every week for over a decade now.
And we couldn't have done it without our loyal community of film fans. Their support over the years has meant so much.
For sure. That reminds me, we should give the merch store a shout out. Buying shirts from thenextreel.com/merch is a great way listeners can continue to support the show. Plus, they get to sport our great designs.
Absolutely. I think sometimes folks forget we have a variety of shirts, mugs, phone cases, and more available. In fact, a great place to start is with a shirt sporting the Next Reel's logo.
We also have that classic Fast Times Spicoli Surf School tee, or the weirdly popular Rusty's European Tour shirt.
The one from National Lampoon's European Vacation. Why is that so popular?
Search me, but we have sold a ridiculous number of those. I guess there are a lot of Rustys taking trips to Europe?
We're always adding new designs based on movies we've covered, like our brand new design for a streetcar named Desire, featuring a streetcar named Desire. So if you want to rep your love of TNR and films, head to thenextreel.com/merch.
Every purchase helps us continue to have these weekly in-depth conversations. So visit thenextreel.com/merch today.
And as always, thanks for listening and being a part of the Next Reel community. We've got lots more great movie chats coming your way. I'm Pete Wright.
And I'm Andy Nelson.
Welcome to The Next Reel. When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
In just a matter of seconds, you're going to hear a classic episode of this show from back in the day when we called ourselves Movies We Like.
It took us a while to settle into the show's format, so you'll notice some differences as you listen to these episodes. For instance, it takes us a bit of time to actually get into the conversation about the movie. Things like that.
But we're still proud of the conversations about the movies themselves, and we think they're worth keeping in the library.
So enjoy these episodes from our back catalog. And you can become part of our Discord community, learn more about the show, and find out how you can become a supporting member at thenextreel.com.
So thank you, everybody, for downloading and listening to The Next Reel. We appreciate your time and attention, and we hope you enjoy the show. No, and then we just now we're recording. So do all that again.
That was great fodder.
I know. I know. That was legitimately awesome fodder, and people missed it. There was some singing. This isn't a lie.
There really was. Yeah. On both ends.
Yeah. God, you totally missed it. The Lone Ranger.
Okay. All I could think about when I was watching it is Wild West 2.
God, totally. Did I ruin that for you or what?
You really did. You really did. But the Wild West too.
Wild West too.
Where's the
Wild
giant
Wild
robot
West.
spider?
There. It's totally ruined that for you.
Oh,
I'm sorry, man. That's horrible.
No, it's fine.
It was where I mean, okay, I watched it on a very small screen, so I'm gonna bring it up here. I don't know what to make of it. The whole Kimosabi bit has me a little bit taken sideways.
You know, I was asking myself when I heard that Johnny Depp was cast as Tonto, and I'm asking myself again. I'm still asking myself, why not cast one of the great Native American actors that we have in our country?
Yeah.
Why do we need to have Johnny Depp? Why can't Johnny Depp be a different cowboy somewhere in the film? Why does it have to be Johnny Depp playing Tonto?
Yeah.
It's just, when that there come a time, Kimosabi. I was like, oh boy.
That was a little much. It was a little much. It's true. I have no hard time with it. And with the art it rings a little bit too much of Dark Knight for me. A little bit with the scrawl, 2013, the whole look, the whole thing.
I wasn't bothered by that so much. It's been a good chunk of time now that films have kind of taken on that real gritty sort of vibe, and I like that vibe. I think it's I like it better than kind of the candy coated vibe. So how would you compare this to Pitch Perfect in terms of your level of interest? Well, I'm probably more likely to see this one in the theater if I see it, only because of the spectacle.
Are you kidding? You're gonna see it. You're gonna see it.
Hey, you know what? I didn't see Battleship. I didn't see John Carter. There are a lot of big spectacle films that I completely dismissed. Cowboys and Aliens, didn't see that one.
I don't feel comfortable being reminded of this. I feel like it's painting a picture that I'm not happy.
Oh.
Hearing this, it feels like you're. I mean, as somebody who did you actually fulfill your destiny and run out and see Judge Dredd after the show last week?
You mean Dredd?
It'll always be Judge Dredd to me.
I did.
I very much look forward to hearing you say this. What did you think of it?
I really liked it. I completely enjoyed it.
What?
It was over the top and bloody, but I thought it was really fun.
What?
I know. I wasn't expecting that at all. I'm
going to see this movie. I'm going to go see it. I don't like you very much, but I'm still going to take your recommendation.
It's so over the top and bloody and just, it's kind of silly, but it's nowhere silly like in the context of Stallone's Judge Dredd. This one is just, it's actually simple, I guess. It's not a very complex story, but I actually enjoyed it. I found myself really kind of engrossed by it. I didn't get to see it in 3D because the timing didn't work out, but do you think I should see it? If I'm going to see it, I should see it in 3D? Is that what you're saying? I could see what the 3D would have brought to it, but I personally was fine just seeing the 2D. So.
Wow.
I know.
I'm thrilled to hear you say that. And I think it's because I was more bullish on just that movie existing than you were in the first place. I think I was more excited because I remembered I don't know. How would you compare Dredd to Judge Dredd in the context of the Mars one? Guado. What's it called? We just saw it. Total Recall.
Which I still haven't seen the remake of that.
I know, but just in terms of sort of your emotional reality of those movies.
Well, okay. Judge Dredd. I went into Judge Dredd and Total Recall both completely with I shouldn't say that, with no context going into Judge Dredd because I never read the comics. I didn't know anything about it. I walked out of the movie going, that was the silliest hunk of garbage. It was so comical. And it was based on a comic, so maybe they were going for that comedic style. But for somebody who's like, the judge, jury, and executioner, as I staying because I watch Hot Fuzz too much. Judge Judy and Executioner, and it's just like killing everybody, and then to throw Rob Schneider in as the sidekick, and it was just so silly, and I just didn't like it at all. And so I had no expectations going into this one because I hated that first one so much. I didn't want to see this one, but a couple of friends kept pressing me to, and so I finally did, and I loved it. Total Recall, the first film, I actually had read the novel adaptation before, so I knew the story. I was excited about it. I saw the movie, and I loved it. So, it's almost a flip reaction. Because I loved the first one so much, I really was hesitant to see this remake because I was kind of afraid it would taint my memories of that original one.
Okay. I think I talked a lot about Total Recall. I was very disappointed at the new one. I very much liked the first one, but I think I like it in hindsight more than I liked it at the time. I liked Judge Dredd. It's another one that I remember fondly, so I'm seeing a lot of parallels here. So it's the Dredd itself has made me nervous, but I really like Dr. McCoy. What's his name?
Yeah, he's great.
Carl. Yeah, I really like him. And so
he plays it well. I mean, he does a great job of that.
You gotta own it. If you're that guy and you're coming off of Star Trek, you got to go all in.
I was just wondering, how if you look a certain way for too long, your face kind of locks, or the whole old wives' tale, how your face will lock in that position or whatever.
Yeah.
He has such a sneer on his face through the whole movie. I'm like, God, how long did it take him to be able to smile again after that film? Oh.
Totally. Okay, well, I'm excited about that then. I am gonna go see that. Maybe I'll try and sneak away this weekend and catch it.
Yeah, it's a fun one. It's a bloody fun one.
So much the better, right?
Yeah,
so much.
There you go.
Right. So there was another trailer, which was the symphonic. I would like to say this is symphonic teaser of Die Hard 5. It's a good day to die. Good day to die hard.
Good day to die hard.
What's and your initial reaction of this?
I've enjoyed all of the Die Hard films to some level or another. They all have their own charm in their own way. I don't know. I know I'll see this one. I'm curious about what they're actually going to do with it because there's not a whole lot in the teaser. But it doesn't look like it compares to any of. I don't know. I'm curious to see what they do with it. It's in Moscow. There's a hot Russian babe in it. He's with his son this time, so yeah, it'll be interesting to see.
There was some kind of weird trailer that was released in like April 2013 that you can find, or 2012 that you can find on YouTube, and it is all about his son, and it's not just his son, but Hans Gruber's son. And I saw that also. I watched on my phone, so I couldn't quite tell what was going on there because this is as far as I know, this is the first official trailer, and it felt like it was just being cut together from old footage or something with like a fan trailer or something. But it was very strange. It looked terrible. Yeah. But what? And then you told me, you said that this teaser had come out today, and that I should check it out. And so I really liked it. I found myself having the same reaction that I've had with all of the Die Hard movies, except for the first one, obviously, which was right. That
stands high above all the others.
Well, yeah. And so as soon as the second one I liked, I ended up liking more than I liked the trailer because, and I have a hard time separating the fact that it was shot at, much of it was shot at our local airport.
Old airport.
Yeah. And what was that? Stapleton.
Yeah.
Stapleton Airport. And so it was all that sort of, I totally was where that guy got shot. And I used that phone that he was using by the bathrooms. and so there was a lot of that. And, but in general, I like the airplane one. The third one was the Samuel L. Jackson one, right?
Yeah. And Jeremy Irons.
I really liked that one. I didn't think I was gonna. I really did. It was totally different. They shook up the whole concept of the race, and I very much liked it.
Which is another good example of taking a script that's completely not written That was the script called, I believe, Simon Says.
Yes.
And turning it into a sequel, much like I kind of talked about in our last episode or a couple episodes ago about Saw 2, and why I felt that one actually worked pretty well, because it was a different script that then they kind of turned around a little bit to shoehorn into the Saw series, which actually I felt worked pretty well. And so, so that surprised by that third Die Hard movie, because I wasn't expecting anything.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And then the fourth one with, was Bruce Willis and the Mac. It's late, and that's Justin Long, and I found myself really liking that one, and so the experience is exactly the same. I see the trailer, I don't like the trailer, I'm exhausted by the whole concept of doing another Die Hard movie. I see the Die Hard movie, and they always manage to do something that's clever enough that keeps me interested, and it's tough not to dig Bruce Willis. I really. He's one of those guys that I just like watching on screen, and I even liked him in that Matthew Perry Mafia movie. I thought that was funny.
Well, and he's one of those great actors who they can throw into any sort of action adventure sort of movie, and just the fact that he's in there, somehow his career makes it better. When he had the antagonist role in Planet Terror, which I wasn't expecting at all, and it was just so much the better for it.
Totally. He's very talented. He brings a lot of that charisma to everything he does, so I'm very excited about this movie on spec. Sort of it's a spec emotion.
Yes, right.
So did we cover our correction about Mama last week and how frustrated we were about Mama and Guillermo del Toro?
Mama, the Forrest Gump horror sequel? We didn't.
I have that in my list of things to talk about that we totally skipped.
Yeah.
And I think we should do that, because I think this is a point that is annoying.
When it's the so-and-so presents dilemma that we're encountering these days.
Yes. And so we said that the movie Mama was a Guillermo del Toro film, and it is not. He just put his name on it.
Right. He's just presenting it, much like Quentin Tarantino is presenting films, and other people are presenting these films because their name attached to a movie somehow is carrying enough weight to draw an audience. And so I don't know what sort of money people pay to get someone's name attached to a film just to kind of boost its ratings.
Well,
but
because
Andres
it's technically
Muschietti.
It's technically, if you look at IMDb, it's technically an executive producer role, right? So I don't understand when this whole presents thing happened, or
I remember seeing when because the first time I got confused about it was Delicatessen, which was directed by Junet and Caro, the two French directors, and it was listed as Terry Gilliam Presents. And as a big Terry Gilliam fan, I saw that and immediately went to it thinking it was a Terry Gilliam film, and much to my surprise, it wasn't. But I completely enjoyed the film because it did kind of ring of Terry Gilliam's sensibilities. So,
absolutely. No, that is a great example. And for some reason you bring up you just brought him up. The other guy that does all the violent stuff. Quentin Tarantino. He does that presents thing all the time, and for some reason it makes sense when he does it.
It's sometimes, yeah. I mean, because it seems like films that he likes really into, like these crazy Asian films or these kind of schlocky grindhouse sorts of films or whatever they are. So it's almost like, as a film fan, it's like this find that he's found something crazy and wild about it, and he wants you to see it. And that's how I kind of feel when I see Quentin Tarantino presents on a film. I don't know if I've ever actually used that to actually go see it, but I do see it quite a bit.
Well, for some reason, it makes it just feels like I think just his personality is out there as he is, as sort of a public face as he has. He kind of gets away that sort of vaudeville showman characteristic, and I think that's what I end up seeing when I see, particularly the grindhouse stuff. When I see Quentin Tarantino presents, it's almost a Hitchcock presents kind of a thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. That's a good example.
Okay, so that was a correction. I'm checking that off my list. Look at me. I'm checking. There's even a box. I'm literally checking a box.
All right.
I have a form, and the box is checked. All right. So, shall we talk about October?
Are we going to talk about October, or did we want to have our quick wrap-up convo on Zanuck?
Oh, yeah, we should do that.
Yeah.
We should totally do that. All right. So, yeah, we spent the last 7 shows talking about our selections of the movies of Richard Zanuck. And it was the first time we tried to kind of tackle films of a particular producer. And as we were wrapping up last week, we had a long show last week, and we just kind of got to thinking at the end of the show that we hadn't had any real sort of a closeout of kind of what we learned after watching all these Zanuck films. Is there anything that we could possibly learn or pull together from watching these movies of a given producer? And was he? I guess the question is, was he was he a good candidate for this kind of a discussion?
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm curious your thoughts. I mean, what did you pull out, if anything, of Zanuck and what he brings to cinema?
Well, that's a really good question. I mean, as we have before, this is a guy who grew up under the Hollywood umbrella with his father running Fox. He was having birthday parties with elephants and Shirley Temple. I mean, he kind of had that crazy child in Hollywood dream life as a kid. And then when he was in college, he just started working in film and never stopped. And he really was so tapped into the business of it and what it took to make projects and everything. And his business sense as to making these films was honed at an early age, even though at an early age, he also had some major flops, which, he did have to grow and learn from, but he did grow and he did learn. And he was always one of those people who was trying to find good stories and good people to work with. And I think that's the big thing to take away from Richard Zanuck as a producer is this role is somebody who, while they may not be kind of calling all the creative shots on a film, they're the one who still is a creative force, creating an environment where everybody else can kind of create this picture and make it work. And Zanuck had actually said, a producer, if he's doing his job, is the creative force. He doesn't tell the director how to direct, but he hires the director. He hires the writer. He's picked the story. He's kind of the grandmaster of it all. I think I said that earlier on in this series. And I find that he's a man who was always pushing to find good stories. Sometimes they worked, sometimes they didn't, but it's anyone who knows the film business knows how hard it is. I mean, he made The Island in 1980. That was a flop. MacArthur was a flop. Neighbors was a flop. He had a lot of flops. He also had a lot of successes. But he was somebody who was not afraid to try new talent. Steven Spielberg, bringing him on to do Sugarland Express. And he was not afraid to fight the system and do what it took to get projects made. And when you're working in this business and you're working with as much money as these people are spending to make a film, you have to be somebody to fight for it. He and his wife, Lily, believed so much in Driving Miss Daisy that, they did it on such a low budget. They found all the ways to cut corners. They were making all the deals that a producer of his stature normally wouldn't be making, but because they believed in the project and because they knew there was a life for this film outside of just the play that Alfred Ury had written, they pushed and they made it happen. And so I think that's the big thing to take away from this. And while the stories may not all be like lining up similarly, like him tapping into producing stories about such and such type of thing, or, father and son sorts of stories like, some directors may do, but his stories really ring true. And I think that's what makes him an effective producer.
I think that is I think that's as good a summation as any. I was working really hard to try to make that point, that there was some sort of a broader point that we should get from his, some sort of a thread, a dramatic thread that we should be able to pull from his stories, from Compulsion through The Sting and Jaws and Driving Miss Daisy and Rush and Big Fish and Sweeney Todd. And I feel like, it would be tough to tie all those movies together directly. But what I think I could say is that this man was truly gifted as a producer in recognizing the stories that would resonate with the audience of their time.
Yeah.
When you look back, I mean, I look back in context of, or sort of tried to contextualize The Sting versus Rush, for example. Right. I mean, Rush happened at a time where there was a it was sort of the onset of the drug war. I mean, we were growing up, and this was kind of the story of our day. It was drugs and cartels, and that's what we heard about on the news, and politicians were all focused on it, and we knew that there were struggles, and we since then it's sort of become part of our cultural gestalt. But then it was kind of reactionary, and Rush really taps into to that story. I just feel like he had a terrific eye for pairing great stories with their contemporary audiences.
Yeah, and that's very true. And I think that may be why he and Tim Burton latched onto each other. Because I think Tim Burton directs that way. I think he can tap into the audience zeitgeist of the time, you could almost say, and is really making films for the time, as we've kind of talked about how some of the Tim Burton films from the 80s just now feel a little dated and stuff like that. But at the time, they were the great films that we remembered. And I think that Zanuck, I think you're right. He really tapped into that as well and enjoyed finding ways to pair everything about what film was doing at any given time, whether it's the or new storytelling methods or whatever, and finding the right people to tap into that and make these films that really did tap into the culture at that moment.
Yeah, they're very much the sort of maestro of popular culture at the time, and there are so many, I think, producers and directors that you say, gosh, he is ahead of his time. He is, he was just a few years too late. And I think you could say that about some Charlie Kaufman films. You could say that about Jason Reitman to some extent. These directors who are just a little too smart for the audience of today, but 2 years later suddenly we get it.
Exactly.
And I think what Zanuck did was tap into what audiences needed to see right then when he was at his very best.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And some of them, I mean, he found the stories that tapped into that, but he also was able to tell if a story. I mean, a good story is a good story, and I don't know if he could tell which one was going to be, a success that would last generations, like Jaws or The Sting, or if it was going to be just a success of the moment. But regardless, he did find ways to tap into that.
Absolutely. Well, it was I think this was the longest series that we've done so far, right? Is that right?
Minus David Fincher.
David Fincher. Yeah, no, he beats it.
If you count Alien 3, which technically we put into our Alien series, David Fincher would be 9.
I think we have to count that.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah. This was a long stretch of with a sort of a loose association of films by going by producer, but I think it was a good exercise. I certainly enjoyed watching these movies. It was like a trip through time, and it was fun to start seeing some of these patterns come out.
And it was interesting to tap into a person like Zanuck, who had been tied into Hollywood for so long, and really start. I mean, when you're a producer, unless you're like somebody like I'm trying to think of a big producer right now, like Steven Spielberg when he's not directing, or Jerry Bruckheimer or something, and somebody who like that who makes these big things, but there's not as much written up about them because they're not usually the story. It's usually the actors, the directors, those sorts of people. So it's a lot harder finding information written up about Zanuck, but watching the films and just reading the bits and bytes that we got as we process these films, it actually was really interesting forming this picture of who this man was. And I found it really just an absolutely fascinating series. I'm really glad that we did this.
I have not started the book that you recommended yet, The Studio.
Yeah.
But I have it. I absolutely have it. It's available as a downloadable, which is fantastic. So,
yeah.
Okay, October.
October.
I know. I'm scared just thinking about it. All right, Andy. So we decided to spend the month of October talking about our favorite horror films.
Yes.
And so we each brought 2.
That's right.
Because we only have 4 weeks in October, so we're doing the 2. We each bring our two favorite. For some reason or another, we have these favorites.
Mm-hmm.
And the first week, we're starting with one of yours.
That's right.
The terrific 1982 John Carpenter's The Thing.
This movie, I accidentally saw at a young age. It was probably just when it first came out on cable. I was traveling with my father on, I don't remember if it was a business trip or if we were seeing friends or something, but we were staying in a hotel. And he was sleeping in one bed, I was in the other. He was up watching TV, and he assumed I was sleeping, and this on Cinemax or HBO or one of those channels. And I had my head cocked to the side with my head on the pillow so he couldn't see my eyes, and I watched this film, and I don't think I slept that night at all. I was so horrified.
Wait, tell me again, how old were you again?
I would have been like 9.
Okay.
I'm not sure when,
right.
9, 10, somewhere around then.
Yeah.
And I just remember, the things that stuck in my mind were the first one, the dog, when the dog thing transforms and attacks all the other dogs and escapes through the ceiling. That was my first experience seeing anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Rob Bottin.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, that's Stan Winston. And then the other big one. I mean, there's a lot of other horrifying things between that. And the next big one that really got me is when the doctor is performing or using the electric paddles to try to wake the guy up, and the chest opens up as a big mouth, and his hands go in, and he bites his hands off. Oh my goodness.
That is the best part. That is the highlight of that movie for me. Absolutely the highlight of the movie for me.
It is. It truly is. It's one of the most visually exciting horror scenes that I think I've ever seen.
It's one of those topped.
It's something that's so unexpected.
Yeah, it is so unexpected. It's like it's an interesting inversion of the chest popper from Alien.
Mm-hmm.
It isn't like, okay, I'm John Carpenter. How can I do something with a chest that is a little bit different? and he totally crushes it. That mouth was just fantastic. It looks like a giant Muppet. The giant horrifying Muppet mouth in this chest.
That certainly wasn't going through my mind when I was 9.
Well, here's the thing,
look at the cute little Muppet.
Here's the thing about this movie. What is it about this movie that has it? Is it when we decide to do this thing, we're going to talk about these horror movies. What was it about The Thing that actually had you say, that's got to be on my list of top favorites? Because it was not a critical hit. It was not a box office hit. Didn't make a whole lot of money. People didn't give it much credit, and I think it's a part of the John Carpenter kind of cult fave thing. But why is it just because it had that impact on you when you were 9, or is there something more to it that really hits home?
There's definitely more to it. I mean, there's a lot to be said as to why it's in my probably top 5 favorite horror movies. In fact, it may be my favorite horror movie because I saw it at a young age and because of the impact that it had on me and my memories of it and just everything about it that was just so terrifying and how well it worked. But I think it's also just this notion of trust and not knowing, the danger that somebody else could be carrying, and the whole concept. I mean, you can put a lot of things into it. They didn't really have these thoughts in their heads, but I mean, you could look at it in the context of diseases or just lies or anything. I mean, there's so many things you could look at the story as kind of a telling of a story, something like this. But that whole notion of you don't know who to trust. You don't know if the person next to you is really the person next to you and is going to be by your side, or if the person next to you is really, now I guess you could say, a traitor. I mean, you could put it in the context of communism, and there's all sorts of ways you could look at this story. I mean, it's very interesting. This is the sort of film that easily could have been made, back during the communist era and the McCarthy era, and could have been some subversive sort of film that was looked at as just a monster movie. But when you look at it years later, you see how they're really using it just much like Invasion of the Body Snatchers, how you're using it to contextualize the times, and it's becoming a societal story. And I know that they weren't really doing that when they were making this film, but it's nice to see a film like that actually does make you think, and it puts those sorts of thoughts in your head. And I really love it.
I think you're right, and I think maybe that's the gift of hindsight of this movie, and it's something that shows it's a different side of the movies of this era, right? Because what really dominated this era more than anything else, I think, was, kind of the slasher film that was kind of, invented in the early 70s, or not invented, but popularized in the early 70s. And we have this kind of cabal of filmmakers in, John Carpenter and Sean Cunningham with Friday the 13th, and Wes Craven, who, the legendary Nightmare on Elm Street and others. And I think that, and Tobe Hooper with the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And I think what the thing does is it gives us, strangely, for as unpopular as it was, gives us a little bit more substance to end up talking about later than these other movies that ended up having, I think, a lot more sort of cult fave credibility in later years.
Yeah, and John Carpenter would do that sometimes. I mean, sometimes he would be taking things to a certain, critical of society sort of level, like They Live, things like that. And sometimes he would just be making movies for fun. He kind of went both ways. This one works better, and you're right. Being able to look back on it and take something else out of it, I think, does give it a little bit of an interesting twist. And
yeah, it's funny because we end up with the we've already talked, and I actually think this would have, obviously, for me at least, it would have shifted my choices had we not already done Jaws and Alien, because those, of the time, those movies were, had a huge impact. But I think The Thing sort of holds its own in kind of watching this movie with it, and holds its own against those films in sort of substance and structure and just the general kind of spookiness of the relationships. As you say, I think one of the things that really makes this movie stand out is that it's the Lord of the Flies aspect of it. It's that entrapment piece of being alone in Antarctica, and I don't know. I watched it again and I thought, gosh, this is a really sad story. It's a sad story because
it is.
We have this poor alien who it's the story of this poor lonely alien who is just trying to build a ship and get home, but at every corner is stopped by these horrible, evil humans.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that, because actually Kurt Russell and John Carpenter talked about that, saying how put it in context of us landing on another planet. If we are on another planet and we start eating some plants to survive, but all of these plants are actually sentient, they're going to be freaking out and trying to figure out how they can stop us from attacking and eating them.
I know, and
it's the same thing here.
It's the I kept thinking about the Saturday Night Live skit, the land shark, I'm just a friendly dolphin, ma'am. That poor dog is like, I'm just a dog. Just let me go. I'm going to just piss on a tree and then I'm going to go home. Please? Why are you shooting at me? So the movie itself is, it's so far as we've started talking about it, it is the story of E.T. with no friendly Elliot.
E.T. and 12 Angry Men.
That's what it is.
It is. It literally is 12 Angry Men.
It is 12 Angry Men. And it is the story of the discovery of this alien creature that it has been unfrozen by some Norwegians, the Norse.
Yeah.
Think it's his Norge on it. And it starts when the early discoverers are chasing it in a helicopter, and they're trying to shoot this dog. And so we see this dog. The dog does not look to me like a wild wolf dog. It looks to be one of the sweetest, most awesome dogs. Until,
even though it really is half wolf.
Yeah, I mean, until its face splits open.
And it starts like spraying stuff all over the other dogs and wrapping its tentacles around them and absorbing their essence.
So the dog thing doesn't make it. The setting is we are in a lonely outpost in Antarctica. This would have been a very different film set in the inner city.
Would have been.
This is and so we open with that sort of sense of kind of just loneliness and desperation even before the action starts.
Yeah.
I think they do it. I think one of the things that Carpenter does really well is set up this that just barren sense of nothingness that is out there among these guys who you never quite get a sense that they actually like each other. How for whatever reason they're there, and we're never really given any sort of setup about why they're there.
Well, it's like a scientific expedition sort of,
but we don't
station,
see.
But we just don't know what they're doing.
Right, we don't know what they're doing. We don't see any science. There's a lot of kind of lounging about, and sometimes they clean things. But we don't really have a sense of what they're doing, and we know that our hero MacReady is a pilot,
right?
Played by the wonderful Kurt Russell.
Yes.
Okay. So where are we so far in the things that you love about this movie? Let's talk about Kurt Russell.
I mean, I grew up watching some of Kurt Russell's other films, like the Computer Wore Tennis Shoes and
Escape from New York,
Disney films he made
Plissken?
as a young kid.
Oh yeah, I know, as a young kid, yeah.
And I mean, I loved those movies. I thought they were so great, and I don't think I ever connected the two that it was the same man, and maybe it was just because of the beard until like later in life when I was like, oh my goodness, that's Dexter on the Computer Wore Tennis Shoes. And it's funny how these Disney kids can grow up, and then all of a sudden it's like that person is no longer a kid. I mean, much like somebody like who we talked about before, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, and how he grew up as kind of a kid actor, and it's that awkward transition into other films, and Kurt Russell, did manage to transition. I mean, he was a very, very busy guy. In fact, I think he had been in the business, like 20 years already by the time he did The Thing.
Right.
So, I mean, this is a man who's had a very long career, a very, very long career. And this film came along, and he had already done Escape from New York just before it with John Carpenter, and they kind of connected. And so John Carpenter was going to be doing this other one, and he asked him if he wanted to be on board. And boy, I tell you, when Kurt Russell is right for a role, just like we were talking about with Bruce Willis earlier, I don't know what it is about that man, but he just brings something to a film that just makes it better for me.
He is, he's, to me, he's there with Bruce Willis.
Yeah.
He's that sort of caliber of action, kind of dramatic action hero. He is to me, the model of, kind of right or wrong, the model of masculinity, like of what a man is. That's what I grew up. He was the guy who was the hero. And, so it, to me, it was, when he sort of takes over and is tested as a leader and starts, cooking the blood at the end, it's like, that's protecting machismo, not just his role and his stake at U.S. Outpost 31. It's protecting, manhood for all of us who were, 10 when this movie came out.
Right.
So, I quite liked it. Now, so how do you, this is your film? How do you want to talk about it from here on out? I've got some other things I want to talk about, but
well, I just want to let's go through the cast, because I think I mean, you had said it already. It's a really interesting dynamic with this cast. I mean, it is 12 men at this outpost, not counting like the Norwegians who are flying around, but you've got these 12 men stationed at this place, and they all have to, figure out how to deal with this alien creature. They're cut off from the world. There's a big storm rolling in. It's kind of that typical horror setup. They've lost radio communication, so basically they're on their own. It's just the 12 of them, and they, whatever, friendships or differences, they have to work it out to figure out how they can get through this and survive. And as they learn, and as you see them kind of testing each other and partnering up, or whatever it is that they're doing all the way through, you're finding that these guys are realizing the horrible place that they've been put in, because this thing essentially takes you over to such a perfect level that nobody can tell that it's whether it's you or the thing, that if they don't all die essentially by the end of this situation that they're in, this thing could get out, and I can't remember how many hours before it would take over the entire world, but it was something in the thousands of hours, and all humanity is gone.
Right.
And so you've got these wonderful 12 actors, and I'll just rattle them off since there are only 12. We've got Kurt Russell as R.J. McCready, Wilford Brimley as Dr. Blair, T.K. Carter as Knowles, David Clennon as Palmer, Keith David as Childs, Richard Dysart as Dr. Copper, Charles Hallahan as Norris, Peter Maloney as George Bennings, Richard Masur as Clark, Donald Moffat as Gary, and Joel Polis as Fuchs, and Thomas Waits as Windows. So those 12 guys are who we're following all through this film, and just everything about their relationships. And even though you don't know what they're doing, they all have a role, and you really get a sense that they have been working here for a while and they know what they're up to. And you get a sense that Clark is kind of the loner who mostly just kind of hangs out with the dogs, and Copper and Blair are kind of the more serious ones who analyze things, and Copper obviously as the doctor is the one who kind of handles all those sorts of things, and you start getting these relationships and really getting a sense of who these people are. And it's the cast dynamic, it just works so well in the story.
I just want to say, as a little addendum, there is one female part in this film.
Yeah, right. A cameo, a brief cameo
by Adrienne Barbeau, playing the voice of the chess computer.
That's right.
And we should look out for her because she is in Argo coming up.
Is she really? I didn't know that.
And so look at me trying to close the loop.
That's fantastic.
I just closed a loop, and somebody better die. Okay. So I'm absolutely with you on the cast, and in particular, there were some that stood out for me. Donald Moffat. That guy always surprises me, and it may be because I get him confused with what's his name? The farmer from Babe, Pig in the City, or Babe the Pig.
Really? With
what's his name?
It's James Cromwell.
James Cromwell. I always get him, and it was to the point where
I kind of get him confused with George Gaines from Punky Brewster.
That's. I think yours might be worse. No, Donald Moffat. It's it's a funny thing about that guy. He's been in a lot of stuff, but mostly the one that keeps coming back to me was Clear and Present Danger.
That's the same thing for me.
These drug cartels are a clear and present danger to the security of the United States of America.
How dare you come in here?
How dare you, sir?
Oh, that was so great. He was great in that movie. So that surprised me that he was in here, and I had totally forgotten that. As you say, Richard Dysart, I think was another, just totally surprised me that this guy was in here. In fact, most of them, this movie is just seeing a bunch of old guys as young guys, and that I think was really, really great.
Richard Dysart, he's one of my favorites, and he's between this and Being There. I mean, he's just been such great films, and I actually have a a perfect role for him if I can ever get him out of retirement. But he's retired. Dadgum.
He is retired. He's he's retired. It is very sad. He was obviously I watched him every week as Leland on L.A. Law, and that's kind of where I felt like I got to know Richard Dysart. He's a great character, but the one really that stands out for me more than any other is Wilford Brimley.
Oh yeah,
I mean seriously,
that man just talking like forces me to pay attention.
Yeah,
and I think it was because what was the TV show Our House that he was on when we were kids. I don't know if you remember watching that show, but boy, he was like the grandpa in that show, and he taught that kid some serious lessons. And I think I learned all those lessons because I was terrified of the man. I mean, he's like that grandfatherly presence that you listen to because he doesn't take any guff.
Yeah, and because he looks like the guy he looks like the oatmeal guy. And so I look at him and I think, God, I'm weirdly hungry.
There's nothing better than seeing Wilford Brimley, the grandfather in Our House, drive his fingers into somebody's face and absorb his essence.
It was so great. Got him by the skin of his face there, just dragging him around by his bones.
Yep.
That was good. When he freaks out and starts destroying everything and saying, nobody's going home.
Yeah.
That was one of the most terrific scenes. And I think that is a great example of going sort of counter construct, right? This is a guy who even then was, it was so wildly out of character to see him in this kind of a role, and to see him kind of lose it like that, and yet he does it really well. I mean, he ends up sort of going off the deep end in such a great way, and the way he plays his recovery is. I mean, it's just at the very top. It is. I'm really tired of being out here, McCready. I would really like to come inside. It's just a terrific moment
with the noose hanging next.
With the noose hanging. So I'm telling you, I'm okay. And it was only a couple of years later that he had. That was, I think. He had been he had been acting, I think, for nearly 15 years.
Quite a while.
His first film was in 1968. And so then this was 1982. But after that, his real peak was in the mid 80s, where, he's 1984, he had 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 films, leading up to 85 Cocoon. And of course,
Richard D. Zanuck's Cocoon.
Yeah, Richard D. Zanuck's Cocoon, and I think the one you and I really liked the most, which was Remo Williams' The Adventure Begins.
Why did I have a feeling you were going to bring that one up?
So I think it's it was for that character who, spoiler alert, Brimley totally did it. I think it was a terrific cast. To get that guy to play that part.
Yeah. No, he was good. I mean, like you're saying, I mean, everyone in this is just stellar, and they work together so well. They work against each other so well. Just the way that Richard Masur plays that kind of quiet loner who wants to kind of hang out more with the dogs, which, I love seeing him. He's one of those guys. I just remember from a couple things as a kid, like Mr. Boogedy and the Stephen King's TV miniseries. And but his kind of presence is so creepy because you always sense that he's the thing. He's one of the thing, And the way that he plays it is as that kind of quiet loner. You think that, and then when you find out that he's really not, and that McCready actually just killed an innocent man, I mean, it's kind of tragic that his personality kind of led to that.
So okay, so that's the cast, and now I feel like we need to talk a little bit about the unspoken character, the Thing.
It was really interesting. Why am I blanking on his name? Rob Bottin was a young kid, and he saw some of John Carpenter's early films and totally fell in love with them. And he somehow he got in touch with John Carpenter and said, look, I know you're making this movie, but I would do anything to help out. If you need a role, I'll do anything. And he ended up as like somebody in Halloween, just someone in the background or whatever it is. And he kind of, his enthusiasm kind of latched on, or John Carpenter latched onto that enthusiasm, and he saw this guy who had kind of had that same sort of passion. And Rob Bottin committed himself so wholeheartedly to the Thing when it came to, John Carpenter offered him the opportunity to do the creature effects in this. And I think John Carpenter said, do you have any idea how you're going to do this? And his answer was, no. but
so,
he'll figure it out.
Good luck.
He basically, I think he literally moved into the studio. He was living at Universal Studios for however long. I know it was over a year that he actually was living on the lot, just working 7 days a week, as day as he could to get these creature effects right. He was only 21 or 22 at the time. He was a very young man, just beginning his work in creature effects, and he learned so much, and I think he ended up doing so much just unique stuff in this film. And his goal as he was doing this was really to kind of create these things that weren't so definable. And I can't remember whose idea it was, but the concept of the Thing was all these different things that you see it kind of transforming into as it's metamorphosing from one being to another were all things that it had absorbed its entire lifespan across the universe. So you're seeing these strange spider creatures or weird little dinosaur dog creatures or whatever they are. And, John Carpenter wanted to make sure that you never felt that it was just a man in a rubber suit. And so that's why you see these amazing things like when Norris's head falls off and it grows, it sprouts these legs and antenna and starts crawling along the floor. I think the effects were so good at such a level that were so horrifyingly bizarre. I think that was one of the big things that audiences at the time, 1982, really had a hard time dealing with. If you look at all the reviews are all like, oh, they took it to all the worst levels. It's horrifying. I think Roger Ebert called it a great barf bag movie. All these people talk about how it's horrifying and just wretched and awful, and they had a really hard time grasping the I hesitate to say the beauty, but of this gore and just the excitement and novelty of doing something that really was so different than just a man in a suit.
I think you're absolutely right. I think there's an enormous amount of just raw cleverness in the Thing, and it's funny trying to come up with a different name for it. And I am not aware of any of the discussion of kind of what the name, how the name of the Thing ends up getting picked. Rather than the xenomorph for the whatever.
Right.
There is no real discussion of that.
Well, I think it was just purely from the previous film that is not really based on, but that they kind of pulled it from, right?
Well, and the book, because all of this was based on the book.
Yeah, right. John W. Campbell's book, Who Goes There.
Have you read it?
I've never read the book. I don't know if he refers to it as the Thing in that book, but the Howard Hawks Christian Nyby film from 1951 was called The Thing from Another World, and they had adapted the book into that film, which wasn't a very faithful adaptation. And John Carpenter really wanted to make a more faithful adaptation to the film because he felt it was more interesting. And so he took The Thing from the Hawks Nyby film, and it actually so much so that the title of how the film begins, when the Thing kind of burns onto the screen, that's literally the exact same way the wording, or the letters are written in The Thing from Another World's opening title.
That's interesting. And to answer your question, in fact, the book, the book Who Goes There, does actually refer to the Thing heavily. I mean, through the whole book, it is referred to as the Thing. The Thing launched itself at Conant and the power. The Thing mewed and hated and dodged. The Thing on the snow did not move as a gleaming teeth ripped it open. I mean, it's all the Thing references, and so I think that makes there's something about not going through the extra mile of actually coming up with a name for a thing that makes it all the more sort of nauseating. Like it's such a disgusting thing that we can't even come up with rational words to define it. Yeah. And because it keeps changing, because every time we see it, it's something new. It's not a man in a suit. It's a man with no body and spider legs in his head. It becomes something I think that much more terrifying, because even though you've seen it, you never know what you're going to see again.
Yeah, and that's totally another reason why I love the film so much, because it's such a mysterious creature.
Yes. It was done really well. And, to your point about Rob Bottin, here's a guy who went on from The Thing and ended up doing some pretty good movies, including, some of our favorites, Seven and Fight Club. But he ended up going on from there to Twilight Zone. Legend, which I believe earned him an award of some sort.
He's an amazing visual effects artist who has kind of disappeared. He hasn't done anything since 2002, and I don't know why. I'd love to. I don't know if he started up a makeup school or something. I don't know, but he hasn't done anything since 2002, and I'm just very curious. But this is a man who did Explorers, Legend, Witches of Eastwick, Inner Space, RoboCop, Total Recall, RoboCop 2, RoboCop 3. It's so many different things. It's just amazing what this man brought to special effects and real physical effects.
And fascinatingly enough, he was the tallest player in the Cantina Band in Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope.
That just makes him all the more awesome.
Am I right? All the more awesome. Okay, can we
Bottin to be my friend?
Can we? He's on your list. Can we talk about the music a little bit? You made some. I don't know if that was supposed to be like a douchey "I hate you, Pete" comment today when we were emailing. I said I thought it was interesting that you're watching The Thing. The movie comes up, and you get John Carpenter, Kurt Russell, right? Top billing, Kurt Russell, and then Ennio Morricone. Second billing for this movie. Why is that? I'm not saying that to diss his music either. If you're going to come back and say he's really awesome, I'm not saying that. Why is he second billing?
I don't know. I honestly, I think it's because of the names in the film that at the time carried weight as far as like credits and who gets what billing and everything. John Carpenter, his name was actually in the title. It's listed as John Carpenter's The Thing when the movie starts. And so his name is right there. Kurt Russell obviously was the star at this point of the film. And the other 11 guys, whilst in various levels of success and notoriety and fame, I don't know if any of them were the sort of name that carried a film. So I don't know how much their agents were able to pull in order to get them, a top billing sort of credit. Ennio Morricone, this is a guy who's been writing film scores. He literally has written several hundred film scores. He has so many film scores under his belt. In Italy, over here in the States, just all around the world, he's been writing scores for decades now, since 40s or 50s, something like that. And I think the reason that he got such high billing is because John Carpenter notoriously is a director who also composes his own music. Typically, it's kind of a simple, just very simplistic sort of music, but the score for Halloween is one of the most memorable horror themes out there, I would say. However, they do tend to be a little simplistic and repetitive. And as much as the theme for Halloween is great, if you watch the film, that's pretty much the only thing you hear when the music plays. It's the same theme, just kind of different variations of it. And I don't know if it was a thing because this was Carpenter's first studio film, and they wanted to try to get somebody else in who had some more cred as far as the score, or if it was something or an opportunity to grab somebody to give him credit because there was a credit that he didn't get on another film. I don't know. There's such politics in all this, but I think it had to do because his name was, of all the people involved in the film, one of the other ones who actually carried some credibility. That's my best guess.
Well, I'll buy it, but it makes me sad for guys like Wilford Brimley who I think, if we're talking about billing, like the 12 Angry Men, those dudes pulled a lot of weight, and it seemed so weirdly out of context to see Morricone get the second billing in this horror flick. Yeah. Because the music, it was good. It wasn't second billing good to me in this film.
Well, no, it's very kind of standard Morricone kind of horror score. I was listening to it earlier, and it definitely has some great stuff going on in it. But it's not the good, the bad, and the ugly or something like that. It works really well. That's why I don't know what sort of contractual thing maybe they had involved. I wish that I knew more about that. If anyone knows, please let us know.
Yeah. And it's almost unfortunate because I think his best work was absolutely yet to come. You see him as a conductor, as a composer, improving even through the 80s with, The Mission and The Untouchables and Cinema Paradiso. And, he's fantastic and got better and less repetitive.
He's listed on IMDb with 512 titles to his name.
Oh, my goodness.
Wow.
That's a little overkill.
Does not stop.
Born in 1928.
Yeah.
Nice work if you can get it. Okay, so there's the music. It budget. It made a little bit more than it cost.
Yeah, it was. I saw the budget somewhere. I want to say the budget came in. There it is, $15 million to produce. And it did okay. It debuted number 8 at the box office, which wasn't great. Unfortunately, it came out right after E.T., which opened 2 weeks beforehand, another Alien film and a much more cuddly Alien film. And it also opened the same day as Blade Runner. So it was up against some top-notch films.
It's tough
June
to compete.
1982.
That's tough competition.
It really is. It really is. So it opened... it opened weekend gross of 3.1 million. It went on. I've seen a couple numbers. One is around 13.7 million. Another is about 19.6 million. So it made its money back barely. And but I think because of I guess you would call it a cult following that it's developed since then on cable and on video and DVD and all those different things, I think it's probably done a little better now. And it's it's obviously developed enough of a cult following to spin off a video game, a comic book series, there was talk of a sequel that Sci-Fi Channel was going to do. Universal Studios even did a little theme park for one of the Halloween nights they had. And then, of course, the prequel that came out last year, which
that is actually in my queue. It's going to be delivered in the next couple of weeks, and I'm very excited to watch it now that I've sort of revisited the thing. Have you seen the 2011 take on it?
I have.
What was your thought?
Well, my first thought is, why aren't they all Norwegian? I couldn't understand that. I'm like, I thought the camp was a camp of Norwegians. Why are the only 2 of them Norwegian?
That's really funny. There were only 2 that were Norwegian, and are we to assume that those are the 2 who get in the helicopter and go try to shoot the dogs?
So that the 2 Norwegians make it out alive.
Oh, no.
Yeah, so it's a little...
Talk about phoning it in.
I liked the concept. I liked what they were trying to do with it. I don't think it worked all the time. And to be honest, the biggest problem I had with it was that Rob Bottin's effects weren't in it. It was all computer effects, and it was obvious. And there's something about seeing the physical effects happening right before your eyes, exploding right before your eyes, that just makes it feel so much more real. And when you see it just doing the CG, the typical CG stuff, it was kind of disappointing for me.
Is there a sense of letdown when you? I mean, it sounds like they really took particularly when compared to Alien Prometheus, they took the more literalist approach to the prequel, where we're going to show you the events that lead up directly to the movie that you know and love from 1982.
Right. It's exactly that. Prequel for The Thing was, I think, what some people were expecting for Prometheus to be.
It sounds to me, having not seen it, that ends up being part of why it would have been a letdown, because you know exactly how it's going to end, and whatever flashy effects you throw at it, you know that it ends up as a dog.
Right, exactly. It would have been the exact same thing if Prometheus was leading us up exactly to the moment where that ship crashes, that the being is sitting in the chair, the chest burster pops out, and all that stuff. I mean, we would have seen it coming. It takes away some of the suspense of where things are going. You know,
interestingly enough, having this conversation, I picked up Prometheus when it came out last week, and I haven't watched it yet, but I'm excited to do so. I've watched the opening credits, which are still stunning.
Yeah.
I mean, beautiful. But having this conversation makes me really want to watch it again, because I think I appreciate the direction that they took in that movie more. In this context.
Definitely.
What else do you want to talk about with this movie?
Just a couple things. One, this is loosely in what John Carpenter considers it's the first part of what he calls his Apocalypse trilogy. It's this film, The Prince of Darkness, and In the Mouth of Madness. All films which are completely unrelated, but as it says here, are each features a potentially apocalyptic scenario. Should the thing ever reach civilization, it'd only be a matter of time before it consumes humanity and takes over the earth. Which I love that he has that little trilogy, and it just makes me feel like, gosh, we're going to have to do those other two in a series these days.
I know.
We can have our little John Carpenter Apocalypse trilogy.
Oh, I love it.
Yep. Right there next to the Three Flavors Cornetto trilogy. Another unofficial trilogy.
We have an unofficial trilogy in the films of Bill Lancaster. You know what I mean?
No.
Bill Lancaster, right, wrote this movie.
Burt Lancaster's son.
Right, and he wrote two other films.
Right. Oh, that's right.
And I think they fit so well together. He in 1977, he wrote The Bad News Bears. In 1978, he wrote The Bad News Bears Go to Japan. And in 1982, his big follow-up was The Thing. Right?
That's right. That's right. That's definitely a trilogy that ties together beautifully.
It ties together beautifully, and it is sort of the study of the deterioration of one man's mind.
Oh, man. Well, the last thing I wanted to talk to you about this film is the fantastic poster. Drew Struzan is a movie poster artist who's been designing posters forever. And his poster, he has created some of the most iconic posters. I think we've talked about some because he did all of the Indiana Jones posters. He did the Star Wars posters. He's done just iconic poster after iconic poster. And seeing Drew Struzan's work just always, I can see a poster and instantly know, oh, that's the Struzan. And the poster that he did for The Thing is another perfect example of just capturing this essence so well. You see this dark body with kind of a light emanating from its head. You know, that you don't know what this being is. It just works. It's such an effective poster. It
is really an effective poster, and it's one that, you know, when you look at, and I haven't even checked the IMPA awards. I'm going there right now because this poster is the one that that absolutely defines this movie, and it's the first one I know that comes up on The Thing. And I didn't even look at the alternate art. I think there's there's a Japanese version of it, which is all anime kind of manga themed, and
yeah.
And another one that looks a little bit more of an H.R. Geiger kind of a take on it. I'm trying to figure out where that one even comes from. The Thing poster number 3, but really the one that sticks is the epic Struzan piece.
Yeah, that's the one. That's the one that I always think of. So it's not the one that's on the DVD cover, but it is the poster that for me is it represents this film.
Yeah.
So,
all right. So we're moving on to week 2 in our Halloween megathon. I'm excited.
Yeah,
I am personally very excited about next week. We're taking on my first choice, which is the 2002 British zombie horror film Danny Boyle's 28 Days Later, which is one of my very favorites. Very favorites. I am a connoisseur of the zombie subgenre, and so I get very excited about this movie.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to talking about it.
Yeah. All right, man. Where would you like people to find you?
People can find me on Twitter at Soda Creek Film, more likely on Facebook, and over at the wonderful rashpixel.tv/MWL. And
Excellent.
Send out some good words.
We appreciate the good words. If you find us in iTunes, I was checking the stats, and there's still just everybody who's listening to the show, with the exception of one person 2 weeks ago who downloaded this show on the Zune. Everybody's getting it through iTunes, really. And I say everybody. A very large portion of our listenership is getting this show through iTunes. And so iTunes listeners, thank you. If next time you were in iTunes, you're just stopping by iTunes, you're wandering through the halls of iTunes, if you could stop by the show and just leave us a little review and a rating, that would be very helpful. It helps other people discover the show and join us in our conversation about movies and movies we like. So definitely do that for us. It really helps us out, and we deeply appreciate your participation. You can find me at Pete Wright on the Twitter, or obviously at rashpixel.tv. You can find the other shows that we do. I did a guest shot on another podcast today.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it was a French podcast, and blessed be the host not making me try to do anything in French. But for anybody who is an Evernote nerd, be looking for the Elephant Channel out of Paris. It's an English language Evernote podcast, and we talk all about how awesome Evernote is. And
fantastic.
Yeah. Totally unrelated to movies, but I got to pimp Pierre Jamal, who does this show, and we had a great conversation. So check it out if you're into that sort of stuff. I think that's all I have.
Wonderful.
I'm going to say bye now.
You know, the tagline on this third The Thing poster is "Man is the warmest place to hide."
We wanted to take a moment to thank you for your continued support over the years. It's hard to believe that we have been having weekly, in-depth discussions about movies since 2011.
That's right, 12 years and counting. Producing this show is a labor of love for us, but it does require a lot of time and effort each week.
If you enjoy our podcast and would love to help keep it going, there are some easy ways you can show your support. One is by using our Originals page to shop for the original source material that movies we've discussed were based on.
That's right. In Season 1 alone, we covered 13 films adapted from books or plays, from Charlie Kaufman's adaptation to David Fincher adaptations like Fight Club.
In Season 2, we covered even more, like Powell and Pressburger's The Red Shoes and The African Queen from our series about legendary cinematographer Jack Cardiff.
We can't forget about the 4 Jason Bourne movies we talked about. Love those movies. Well, the original trilogy, at least.
For our Richard D. Zanuck series, we did Jaws, Rush, Big Fish, and more. And for our horror series, we talked about John Carpenter's The Thing, which was adapted from Who Goes There?
We did our first great car chase series with movies like Bullet, The French Connection, and Drive. And for the holidays, we did Preston Sturgis's Christmas in July.
We had a great John Huston series with adaptations like The Maltese Falcon and The Treasure of the Sierra Madre.
And for our baseball series, Moneyball with Brad Pitt. Have I told you lately how much I love that movie?
Yeah, I think you have. Plus, our Magician series and Heist film series had adaptations as well.
Tons of page-to-screen gems. Listeners can find the details and links to the original material at thenextreel.com/originals. Every book, play, or movie you buy through our links helps support the show, and it's no extra cost to you.
So dive in and get your next read today. thenextreel.com/originals has all the films adapted from other sources that not only we have covered, but all of the shows on the Next Reel family of podcasts. Check it out and get reading.
Support the show and build your reading list. It's a win-win. Head to thenextreel.com/originals.